There was a man named Daniel. He wasn't extreme in any direction, not a preacher, not an atheist. Just a regular guy living in a busy American city where life moves fast. People are always busy, and most things are done on autopilot. Daniel believed in God in a quiet, distant way. Not loud faith, not deep discipline. More like background belief. Something you don't question, but also don't fully live by. He would go to church sometimes, say a quick prayer before meals, and then return to his normal life, where work, stress, social media, and routines filled almost every hour of his day. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. He was functioning. He had friends, responsibilities, goals, but inside, something was slowly changing without him noticing. It started one night when he couldn't sleep, not because of noise, not because of stress that was obvious, but because his thoughts, the ones he usually pushed away, suddenly became too loud to ignore. He stared at the ceiling and asked himself a strange question. What if the way I live every day is slowly shaping me into someone I don't even recognize? That question didn't leave him. Over the next days, he started observing himself, not judging, just noticing. And what he discovered wasn't about big sins or dramatic mistakes. It was something much more subtle, ordinary behaviors, things everyone around him did, things he himself called normal. But the more he looked at them, the more he wondered if normal always meant right. And slowly, he began to see 7 patterns in his life and the lives of people around him. The first was dishonesty disguised as comfort, always saying, "I'm fine," when you're not. Daniel noticed how automatic it was. Someone asks, "How are you?" And the answer comes instantly, "I'm good," even when he wasn't. At work, his colleague once stopped and looked at him. "You okay? You seem different lately." Daniel smiled like always. "Yeah, just tired." But inside, he wasn't just tired. He was mentally overloaded, emotionally disconnected, quietly stressed in ways he never expressed. And that's when he realized something uncomfortable. Every time he said, "I'm fine," without meaning it, he wasn't just protecting others from his truth. He was slowly disconnecting from his own reality. And when you disconnect from your own truth long enough, even your emotions stop feeling clear. The second pattern was comparison, disguised as motivation. Social media made it worse. He would scroll through Instagram or TikTok and see people traveling, buying cars, building businesses, getting engaged, achieving things that looked effortless. He told himself, "This motivates me." But late at night, it didn't feel like motivation. It felt like pressure. One night, after scrolling for almost an hour, he closed his phone and thought, "I should be further by now." And in that moment, he realized something important. Comparison doesn't always push you forward. Sometimes it quietly steals your gratitude. You stop seeing your own progress because you are too busy measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. The third pattern was broken promises to himself. These were small things, almost invisible. "I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix my sleep schedule next week. I'll go to the gym on Monday. I'll pray more when things calm down." Nothing serious, nothing dramatic, but they kept repeating. And Daniel began to notice something deeper. Every time he broke a promise to himself, even a small one, something inside him weakened, not physically, but mentally. Slowly, he stopped fully trusting his own words. And without self-trust, even discipline becomes unstable. The fourth pattern was reacting without understanding. One evening, he had a small argument with his sister. It wasn't about anything important, a missed message, a misunderstanding. But his reaction came too fast. His tone was sharp before he even thought about it. Later, sitting alone, he replayed the moment and realized something uncomfortable. His reaction had very little to do with the situation itself. It had everything to do with everything he had been carrying before it. Stress, pressure, unspoken frustration, exhaustion. And he remembered something he once heard. People don't always react to the present moment. They react to everything they never processed from the past. The fifth pattern was consuming everything but reflecting on nothing. Daniel realized he was constantly filling his mind. Videos, podcasts, news, entertainment, opinions, scrolling endlessly from one thing to another. But there was almost no silence, no reflection, no space to process anything. One night he sat in his room without his phone for 10 minutes, just silence, and it felt uncomfortable. Not because silence was bad, but because it was unfamiliar. And that made him realize something important. A mind that is always full eventually becomes unclear. Not because it lacks information, but because it never processes it. The sixth pattern was helping others to avoid facing himself. Daniel was a good friend, always available, always ready to help, always listening to others' problems. And that wasn't fake, he genuinely cared. But over time, he noticed something subtle. Staying busy with other people's lives sometimes became a way to avoid his own. Because when you are constantly solving external problems, you don't have to sit with internal questions and silence. The kind where you are alone with yourself was something he had been avoiding for a long time without realizing it. The seventh pattern was living for approval instead of truth. This one was the hardest to admit. So many of his decisions were shaped by a quiet question. What will people think? What to post? What to say? What to hide? What to pursue? Even his goals sometimes weren't fully his own. They were shaped by what looked impressive, acceptable, or successful in the eyes of others. One evening, he wrote in his notebook, "If nobody could judge me, what would I actually choose?" And he sat there for a long time without writing anything else, because the answer wasn't clear yet. After weeks of reflection, Daniel realized something that brought all of this together. None of these things were extreme. None of them looked like obvious wrongdoing. There were no dramatic failures, no shocking moments, no visible collapse. And that was exactly why they were powerful, because it's really one big decision that changes a life. It's small, repeated habits, small thoughts, small reactions, small compromises that seem harmless in the moment, but over time, they shape the direction of a person's mind, character, and peace. Not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly, almost invisibly. Daniel didn't become perfect after realizing this. He didn't suddenly transform his entire life, but something shifted inside him. He started noticing. When he said, "I'm fine," he paused for a second longer. When he compared himself, he caught it earlier. When he reacted too fast, he slowed down. When he filled his mind too much, he made space for silence. When he lived for approval, he questioned it. And slowly, his life didn't become easier, but it became more honest. And maybe that was the real point. Because the most dangerous patterns in life are not the ones that destroy everything at once. They are the ones that quietly disconnect you from yourself, from truth, and from what you actually value. while still letting you function normally. And the moment you start noticing them is often the moment real change begins.